Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I have to say that I'm detecting in myself and in others a bit of what I would call pandemic exhaustion. We're all getting a little tired of the constraints that we're under. And like many of you, I just want to go to a movie. I want to sit in a movie theater and eat popcorn. I want to go to a restaurant with my friends and sit there and have fun, or even go into the grocery store or the farmer's market and walk in there and just feel comfortable, not feel worried like, oh my God, did I expose myself to something? Am I going to actually bring this virus home? Or, like just feel like we're just over it, and I know that we have to just feel so grateful that we're healthy and that we're safe. But all I know is the way I feel is like there's a there's a bit of joy and aliveness and fun that's just missing in my life right now. And I'm being creative on how to make these shifts and do it, but it's tough. And the other thing is that, like, looking at the economy and the devastation that so many people are experiencing, and that things are not going back to normal. Like they're just not going back to normal. They're like, there's going to be a new reality. And so many of these little small businesses that have been closed, we're actually learning are actually going out of business. They are not coming back. So what we have to do is we have to reach deep down and figure out how to make these pivots in our life, because there's changes and we have to be able to adapt to that. And that's why I'm so thrilled to have on my friend who I've known for over 30 years, Martha McCully. She was the founding editor at Allure magazine. She's an executive for many years with InStyle. She was a celebrity judge at HGTV's design show for over 3 years. She's a writer. She's a thinker. And trust me, she is a thinker. She's an author. But what I think one of Martha's greatest skills is that she always has a pulse. She has this pulse and a certain vibration. It's like an awareness of what the zeitgeist out there in the marketplace. They say there are three kinds of people. There are those kinds of people that make things happen, those kind of people that watch things happen, and there's those kind of people that say, what the hell happened? Well, what I'm telling you is Martha McCully is a make things happen person. She actually reminds me of this quote that Abraham Lincoln said. And he said, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And that to me just sort of sums up who Martha is. About 12 years ago, when she was at the top, she was at InStyle magazine, which was like, even where they were located, it was like this mega in the center of New York City culture, and she was in it. And at that time, she actually decided to make a pivot. She chose to leave that, I'm not going to say cushy, because I know that she worked her butt off like 24/7, but it was a big job with a big title and an expense account and a lot of clout. But even at that time, she decided to make a change and really sort of understand for herself at this time of her life what her work life balance, how she wanted to really carve out her life. And I know she's done an amazing, amazing job at it. And that is because she has the creativity, the discipline, and the adaptability. And those are the things that we need right here and right now in order for all of us to make these pivots in this time. So I'd like to welcome my dear friend, Martha McCully.
Lavinia, thank you so much for that introduction. That is like, I have a little chill, like listening to. That's so sweet. Thank you. And thank you for having me here.
So true. And like we were talking, we were even connecting a little bit before that when you left, like that moment, like take us back to that moment 12 years ago. Like I said, you're in like the hub of the mega publishing world out there. You're at InStyle, you have a big job. And Martha is about ready to say, you know what? This is not going to be the next decade of my life.
That's exactly what I said. And it's funny because my office, I overlooked Radio City Music Hall. I had the greatest office. And there was an article this Sunday in the New York Times about 1271 Avenue of the Americas, which is what my building was. It was the Time Life building, a very famous building, as being like this sort of center of that world and publishing and the steakhouses and the hot dog guy on the corner and, you know, the B, D, and F train in the basement. And like, that was, you know, it was really intense. And the day I left, I was reliving this morning when I was getting ready for this. I left with like a rolly bag and went to the airport, got on a flight to Uruguay, and Temple St. Clair gave me this beautiful Ganesh. Like literally when I was walking out the door, she sent me this package, and it's the remover of obstacles. And I got on the plane and I woke up the next day and some, you know, driver in a white pickup truck picked me up and we were rolling, you know, going through the rolling green hills of Uruguay. And I was just like, I'm free. Like, I can't believe it. It was really kind of a thrill.
So I'm sure there had to be, I'm free and I'm frightened. Like,
yeah, and then free fall.
Like, because let's face it, like it's frightening. Like it's frightening to go out there. I mean, I knew you had already been doing probably on the side freelance stuff, but no, you weren't. I guess
last week I had one project, my last week of work.
Oh my gosh.
So
think about it, because this is what we're facing right here and right now. This is what people are facing. Like, I mean, how many times do I hear that story of somebody and like, oh, I went back, I left my office. I thought I was going to be gone for like, you know, from Thursday to Monday.
Yeah.
Like not back. And now the realization started, you know, then you're furloughed and then you're let go. And then it's like, you know, and
yeah, I mean, I feel very empathetic and I feel, you know, I really feel for everybody who's going through this because I did go through it 12 years ago. And that's why, you know, as you and I were originally talking, the lockdown and the working from home and all that was not as shocking to me because I had gone through it and I had gone through the anxiety of the whole situation and that it really was a free fall. It's like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And it's so scary.
I'm sure you had family and friends that were like, okay, she's going to come back from vacation and go back to a job.
Yeah. No, actually, you know, yeah, some of my mentors were like that, like, you're going to come back. But I had started sort of thinking about this the year before, and I had gone out to California and sort of, you know, met with some people. But I also, two of my really good friends, you know, I was sort of looking around like, who are my mentors who can help me in this transition? Like, what am I doing? And I kind of identified friends of mine who had more creative lives, who worked for themselves. They had their own businesses. My friend Katie Brown and my friend Ifat Oren. Ifat's in LA, Katie was on the East Coast at the time. And they became my mentors and they really encouraged me to be on my own because they knew me and they knew that's really what I wanted and not to be sort of feeling trapped anymore. And so I really do, first and foremost, encourage people to look around at the people in their lives who they admire and that they think, oh, wow, how did she do that? How could I do that? You know, and learn from them and talk to them about it. So a lot of my friends were very encouraging, and that made a huge difference to me.
Talk a
You know,
lot.
I just
We talk a lot on the conversations about getting a mentor and how important it is to be able to ask for help and in times like that.
Yeah, and I think a key is to look at sort of unlikely places. Everybody thinks like their mentor, their boss is their mentor. Well, that's definitely not it always. I mean, for a lot of times that's not it at all. I say like look around at your friends, look at the person who started the bakery down the street, look at, um, somebody maybe in your family who's doing something that you're like, wow, how'd she get to do that? And then like talk to them about it. And yeah, and just sort of find people. I have another mentor here who I met on a hiking trip, or we were talking about like I meet so many of my friends and close friends in exercise classes, or, those have become people that I look to for advice. And it is in unlikely places sometimes.
So let me ask you, what scares you most about working for yourself?
Oh, the money. I mean, you know me. I'm always worried about it. Like I just have like insecurity about it. But that's first. But I also like it scares me too, thinking like, well, what am I doing? What am I going to be doing in 10 years? I don't really have a plan, and I feel like during this time this spring when everybody was home and still home, for many people, it's like you can't have a plan. You have to deal with the unplan of it and like say, I have to really live in the present. I really have to make decisions for what's happening right in front of me. I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. I don't know what's going to happen in a year in my professional life. I try to set things up always. So now I work for myself. I'm a writer. I consult with brands. I copyright. I help brands create content. I've done everything from, I was on Home Shopping Network for 3 years. I got fired by Dr. Phil once. Like I've had a lot of different projects. I mean, maybe 100. And, so I don't really know.
I have another question for you. Like, what did you learn from being fired? Because I always think there's such a blessing and an opportunity to learn.
Yeah. And I've been fired many times, I would say. But yeah, there's so much because it's sort of like you feel so badly and there's nowhere to go. You're down. Like that day though, I was with a friend. I was working on this project with my friend Tina, and we went to Moza for lunch afterward because we were like, that was so intense. He fired me in front of like a group of 20 people. And I was on trial. It was really crazy. And I was like, that was so intense. But because I had my friend, colleague, we were working on it together and we were laughing and we were like, okay, it's over. And now on to the next, it's like you start to build a resilience. And same thing with working on projects. Like I like working on projects because you learn something from each one, but then you move on to the next and you get more resilient and you get more skills too. And it's, it builds on each other.
I always say that like when I'm starting a project or even working with our team, there's basically 3 things that I always look at. First, it's the intention. So it goes intention, attention. So the intention is the idea. Like, so what's the idea? The attention is the focus. Okay, so what are we focusing on? And then you have to come up with the action. And the action is the plan. So it's your plan of action. And when you have those 3, you're clear, you have your intention. And the thing I always notice very often is people, when they're just starting to make this pivot, they usually have the intention and the action. So when you have the intention and you have the action, all you're going to have in there is grit and hustle. If you don't have the intention, the focus, and really go in there and put the intention on it. And because with grit and hustle, it's not sustainable. It just, after a while, you just break down. So it's really about what is your intention? What attention am I putting on it? And what action? And then from there, you start getting clarity. you have clarity. It's like, oh my God, I can see better now. And then from the clarity, you have confidence to move forward. So when you start like doing, and I'm sure you did these steps without even knowing it, because they're just common. But sometimes when somebody gives it to you in a way that you can put it together and go, wow, I get that. I get
Well,
what I would need to do here.
it's interesting you're saying that about the you're talking about seeing it, and I'm a big believer in imagining what you want your life to be. And my friends who like talk to me about like what they could do next or something, I'm always like, just, you know what, lie down in a dark room with nobody around you and picture what you want your life to be like. And I did that. I remember this woman, actually, I met her on a hiking trip too. And she had reinvented herself to become a life coach. And she came to see me. I was at InStyle, and she was telling me about her method. And I guess a lot of life coaches are like this. It's like, picture your life as you want it to be. And I told her, I'm in California. I'm in a purple dress. I'm like, there's water around me, and I'm working with writers a lot. And I'm like, I saw my life. And she's like, okay, but you're in an office in New York City. And I'm like, yeah. And I took the subway here. I'm like, it's not matching up.
Right.
And she was like, yeah, every decision that you make should match up to that. If that really is what you want to look like, you have to make decisions in that direction. So I think seeing things and imagining what you want your life to like I, living in California, I'd never lived in California, but I just pictured myself there. And that's, I felt like that was going to be a big part of my life. And it is. I mean, I don't live there 12 months a year, but I live there most of the time. And I love it so much. And I just feel like I pictured it. So I recommend that to people.
You could visualize it. And then I'm sure at some point you had to put a plan. You had to put attention to it. What it looked like, how am I going to do this? How do I, always say, like, I know for myself, there are certain things that I know I have to feel good. There has to be a connection. I have to know that I'm whatever I'm bringing forth is making better for people, better for the world, better for the planet. I definitely know that when I'm aligned with that, I'm aligned with my heart. And then when I have that alignment, then it's like, I don't even feel like I'm working. It's like, you could look at the clock and be like, oh my God, we've been doing this for 6 hours. It feels like we haven't even been doing this for an hour. Mm-hmm. Like I always say, that's when you're in your lane. Like that's when you're in the lane, because you're moving and shaking and doing, and you're moving forward and you're connecting with people. And every time you go on a hike or you connect with somebody, something good comes out of it, like an opportunity, a connection, somebody else is collaborating. And before you know it, you have another job.
Yeah, exactly. And it does kind of happen like that. People say like, well, what have you learned from this? And what was the biggest challenge? Like for me, it was like having the faith that will happen. And it does happen because the first like 8 years I was on my own, I was like a nervous wreck all the time. I was anxious all the time about it. And it's only in the last few years because I really have that faith, like, oh, something else will happen. Something else will come down the pike. I'll meet somebody else. I'll start talking. I have a different idea. And that is kind of how it happens. And you just have to have that faith that if you're doing what feels good to you on a daily basis, those things will fall into place.
So what is the biggest lesson that you learned about being on your own?
I think the having faith is really important. Like just knowing that, the first time I was ever on my own was when I left Allure, and I had like a few weeks off. And I remember like crying on the beach, in East Hampton, which is like pathetic, like that I would, not be so appreciative of like where I was. But just thinking like, I'm not going to be homeless. Like I'm going, I can do this. But I had no confidence at that point that I could be on my own. So I think learning that things will work out and that you can make things happen, and to have that faith, but also to, to sort of build on the experience you have, and to realize like it's everything that you've done is a stepping stone. And I'm not saying just everything professionally, it could be personally. I mean, you remember I was very young and I decided to buy a house by myself. And at the time, 25 years ago, women were not just buying houses by themselves and renovating them. It was kind of a weird thing. And then a couple of my girlfriends did it too afterward. And that set me off in a whole different trajectory. I started writing about houses. I started producing stories for, Elle Decor and writing for them. And then when I was at InStyle, I worked in, that area. That was part of what I did. And it just, you never know when something personal like that you just enjoy doing leads to something professional. And that's why I always also tell my friends who are trying to think of something to do next or during this time, like, well, what do you like to do? What do you do on the weekends? Like, what do you do that's really enjoyable to you, whether it's baking or, I remember that 60 Minutes story or something about the woman who makes hummus now for a living. She has some huge brand of hummus. I love making hummus. Like like, you never know, like when something you do can lead to a business.
And I think you're, so right. I mean, I look at a gentleman I know from New York who he lost his job and he's, walking dogs. And he's so happy, like being this dog walker. And even though people are home more, because at first people were like, you're never going to get, people aren't going to do that. They're home. Now they'll walk their own dog. But, a lot of the bigger dogs, they need real exercise. They don't just go on a little dog walk. So he was like actually exercising the dogs. And now he's doing so well. He has a great business. Another friend of mine makes gluten-free bread. And she delivers, gluten-free bread all over Malibu and the Palisades. And everybody is like, they can't wait for their bread to be delivered twice a week. And now they're shipping it and they're giving it to friends. And I mean,
well, I think that, this time is, and all my friends say to me like, wow, you weren't depressed at all. I mean, there were definitely, not everything's easy during this time. I'm not making light of it. And I think people are having, a terrible, awful time. And there are a lot of terrible things are happening, but I've tried to stay positive. And I do feel like there's opportunity in this pandemic and staying at home because people need different things. And the whole, world is different. It's like, we're not going out and getting, a blowout every week, like I'm at home with that straightening thing, like, my good hair day thing. Like people are doing things differently. And I think if you look around and see what's the opportunity, like, food shopping is really hard. I heard about, you were telling me about our friend who like shops for food for people now. Like, doesn't seem like a business, but you never know, first of all, how big that can get. And that's what people need right now. They need everything delivered. So there's a business in that.
So how can you personally guide us? Like everybody's sitting here and was like, you can make this happen. Like, what would you say the first couple steps? Okay, this is the first couple steps that you would need to do to get on that path.
Well, I think even before, like, I didn't have an idea of what I was going to do, quite honestly. Like, but so even before that, though,
you knew the skill set you had.
Yes, right. So, right. Think about what you are good at, what you like to do. I love to write. I felt like I wasn't writing as much being an editor. Ironically, I was editing or producing things or managing people and pages, but not necessarily writing. And I wanted to be writing more. I wanted to be more in like marketing and brands. And I like all that. I love the beauty world and industry. I always have. But like, that's a good example. I started going to like the beauty supply store near me when I was in high school. And like, I would just go in there and like study all the products. And, and I went to college. I was first a chemistry major. And I was like, how am I going to make chemistry work? But it is part of beauty. So think about what you love. Think about like what you loved as a kid sometimes, because before you had to, your parents said you have to be a lawyer or, something that you just didn't end up liking. So think about what you used to do when you were younger and kind of tap into that. And like, is there something now that you do that relates to that? And, what were you like then? Like I was, I loved to read and write, and I'm not such a great reader now, but like I loved all of that growing up. And I feel like if you go back to those things that are, really a part of who you are, a lot of people are lucky. They continue on what they started doing when they were 12, taking photographs or whatever, and then they were on one path their whole life. But I think there are a lot of clues to what you want to do, based on your past, like when you're young. But then when you go on your own, like there are certain things like become an LLC or some kind of sole proprietorship, have a website. And when you get your website together, make sure the URL is available, like for, you can have your website, but then I did something. Oh, my company name was not available as a URL. Like that was stupid. I just didn't check, 12 years ago. I still believe in having, business cards. Like I use those Moo business cards, and I have them made and I still hand them out. I know it's old school, it's paper, but like I gave one out on Monday. I went to a networking lunch that was so beautiful, and I was like handing out my card, like, so things like that. I still do, things like that, but get yourself set up, get a credit card for your business. That's separate from your personal expenses. Get an accountant to help you. So there are a lot of little things like that. And again, like I had friends tell me how to do that. I didn't know how to do a lot of those basic things. And I just asked my friends who work for themselves, like, what are the basic things I need to do? And they were always like generous and helpful. And
Yeah, I think a lot of times we have resources right around us to even just sit down at the table and say to your friends, like, this is my idea, this is my vision, this is what I'm thinking, and just really have people, have your, like you say, friends and family kind of help you start putting a frame. Like you have to kind of have a little bit of a frame and around something, and then you just start, like, at some point you just do it, right? Like you just have to do it. You have to have the courage to take that first step to say that I'm doing this,
right.
And like connect to what people, like what you're seeing. Like I think being present and seeing what people need, like what is it that people need in this new reality, things that maybe they didn't need in the past, but we need now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the food thing is a big deal. Like how people are getting their food is like, it's not really worked out. I know there's Instacart and Fresh Direct and delivery services, but
especially for the seniors.
yeah, I mean, people are, making meals
Yeah.
every single day. If you're 80 years old, like it's not so easy. So I think things
People
like
don't
that.
want to go shopping more than once a week. Like
No.
they really don't want to go shopping. So there usually isn't enough food for the whole week. So they definitely have to supplement with some other stuff.
Yeah, anything that's deliverable, like food that's deliverable or produce. I mean, California is so great for that, but not everywhere is. And it's like maybe it's curating that and putting things together from other people who are making the bread or have a new baking business, and then somebody gets it all together and makes a delivery service out of it or something like that. It's like people need help right now, or doing errands. Can you do errands for other people as a business? Like get, paid hourly or something, and you're helping somebody else at the same time.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I had an errand service. Yeah. When I think I was 23 years old, and it was called Express Errands. And my slogan was, for those in LA that need 28 hours in a day.
I love that.
I just really ran errands for people, especially actors. And because in those days, when the people would come to fix your washer and dryer, they would say, okay, between 8 and 12. And these guys were out working and they didn't have anybody to sit. They were single, to sit in their house. So I would go in there and just sit in their house from 8 to 12 and wait for the Sears guy to come and fix there. But then before you know it, one person gave my name to another, and I had hired like 4 girls to work for me.
Wow.
It was amazing. I mean, we didn't have Uber in those days. So sometimes we would go to the airport and pick up their moms, take them grocery shopping. I mean, it was just, and it all came out of just an idea of, or actually, no, it came out of my cousin asking me once to go and do that for him. And then his friend asked me, and then I thought, wow, there's a business I could be doing here. So
I had a business in high school, making silver jewelry. It was called Silver by Martha. And, and I had business cards. And I partly think that's how I got into college is I used to bring my portfolio and say like, I have this business and I sell jewelry. And, it was, I don't know, it was like just fun doing something like that and then selling it.
Well, that is business, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not great at selling
I think
things,
you said something is that sometimes people get intimidated by the word like, I can't be an entrepreneur, or I'm not a business person, I'm an artist. But that's why I always tell my young people, learn how to sell. I don't care what you do, but learn how to sell, because everyone has to be able to sell their services. So I do think it's a time now to be able to connect to that, to figure it out, and then, bust a move, like put your friends there and come up with a dialogue, like come up with a, not your elevator pitch, because I hate that, but be able to talk, like, and work it through so that you you really feel confident when you go out there and you're talking about something that you're introducing to the world that's new.
Well, and also position it like, what can I do for you? Sort of like, what can I do for you that may, when you're listening to other people talk about their business, there's maybe it's somebody who works in an office it's more of a corporate thing, or somebody who has a small business, and then you start talking to them and you realize like what their issues are, and then maybe how you could help them. I mean, like when I started out as an assistant at GQ, like I was doing everybody's expenses because nobody else wanted to do them. And I loved it. I was like, I don't care. I'm the assistant. I'll do them all, just something like that. Like, and I don't know, it's a weird example, but now with technology, there's so many apps and ways to do things, but there are plenty of people who don't know how to use them. And, younger people, like I don't have kids. So I'm always like, can I borrow your kids to like help me do something? Because there's a business in that too.
Oh, I think there's definitely, because I have to sit here and wait for my son or my stepson to come home to learn how to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely people have talents. I mean, that's just an example of like, they don't even think of it as a talent or a skill that to somebody else, it really is. So even writing, for example, bios for people, that everybody who has a website or they don't know how to write about themselves on LinkedIn or, doing things like that for people. So some people they can't do that themselves. And you think, oh, it's no big deal because I can write a bio for somebody. Then you realize like, oh, actually they don't have that skill. And that's something I could bring to them. So it's talking to people and seeing what they need.
That's so funny you say that, because I remember years ago, I would help all my friends write their Match.coms.
Yeah, I did that too.
They would write it and it would be, I would be like, honey, you sound so boring. Like I would just pass. And then we would sit there with like a glass of wine and we would just write it. And they'd be like, oh my God, I would even be flirting with myself right now. I sound so good. But even then I remember thinking, somebody could make a business out of this.
And there are plenty of people who do that and help you. Not that I'm an expert on online dating, but that help you, navigate and choose people and, write your bio and write your profile and learn how to use it. So yeah, that's a business.
So what I'm really hearing is like, we have to think out of the box. For many of us, it means we have to also like take off of this is beneath us. Oh, I have my master's in this, I have my PhD in this, or I have my whatever in this, and my job was so high, and now I'm going to go do that. Like, we have to like let the ego go a little bit.
Totally.
So that we can sort of like, kind of like, it's like taking a clean canvas and finding the joy in that, to start from the beginning to figure out ways. And what I loved what you said is, take your experience from your past, so take all of our experience from our past and figure out, where is there some little white space here in something that I love to do that could actually make a difference for somebody, or that somebody would actually want to buy this service or buy this product. And
I also think you can apply, like, I used to do this in magazines too, like, a beauty story was often done in a certain way. It was like, before and after, or or how to get the look, break it down. And so I remember like doing that and taking that idea at InStyle and applying it to home stories. It's like doing a before and after, doing an after and before, or doing like how to get this look for home. Like, and I feel like that way of thinking too can be applied with looking for new opportunities. So that if you're used to doing things in a certain way in your business, take that and apply it to a different business that doesn't do that now.
Wow, that's great.
So for example, like a specific thing would be, I always think in real estate, like the way things are described, they could describe them more like an editorial story, and have more of a story to describe a house,
right?
Something like that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe there's an opportunity working with writing for real estate marketing companies, something like that. It's just like taking one way of thinking about it and applying it to a different business.
Yeah, I think I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. I just think we have to, like you say, just connect to what would make us feel good. And what I noticed is, very often if I want something, other people want it too. Like, I'm not an anomaly. I'm not like, oh, I'm the only person that would want this service, So very often, if you would want it, other people would definitely want it,
Look at the beauty business. There's so much innovation in it right now. There's so many independent brands, and technology allows you to start a brand, and get it out there. You don't have to go through the traditional, obviously, the retail department store. How many things have you bought on Instagram since all this happened? It's like, people can sell things in a different way now. So technology can really help you be more creative in finding something to do and thinking of ways to sell things. And I think beauty is a great example of that. There's so many interesting things and products being made right now and marketed in a different way.
So here's one question that I have for you. Who should you listen to when making a big change in your life, and who shouldn't you listen to? Like, who might be the ones that you're gonna like, and the ones who you think, no, I'm not going there?
You should definitely listen to yourself. Obviously, it's like, you kind of know deep down, like when you're being really truly authentic and honest with yourself and when you're not. And it's like, we all have that voice, we've all heard about it, and it's really connecting with that and making sure that that's the most important voice that you listen to. And then, like I was saying before, the people in your life who have a kind of life that you want, listen to them.
Or two, yeah.
When you're trying to leave corporate America, for example, or you've had to leave, you don't want to necessarily listen to the person who's like still stuck there, who wants to get out, because they're going to tell you how to get back in.
Yeah.
And that may not be what you want.
There's a lot of fear You know, a lot of times people have a lot of fear about leaving corporate America, you know.
Oh yeah, well, you know, I mean, that's one of the myths of security. You
Mhm.
know, security, we all thought like corporations gave you security, and now people are unfortunately learning that is absolutely not the truth. It's a false sense of security. It's worse because you think there's security and there actually isn't. And I always felt like, you know, the only place you can be really secure is in yourself, and feeling like, I mean, my friends joke that I'm a pilgrim because I sometimes feel like I have to do everything myself.
Mhm.
But, you know,
Mhm.
sometimes I do feel that way. And I felt that way work wise, like I just wanted to depend on myself. And it just made me feel less anxious in the end than, you know, on a company that maybe changes their mind about you, or because of what's going on right now, you know, furloughs you or lays you off. And then what? And then you do have that fear. So it's always a good idea to sort of be thinking all along, like, what else could I do? What else would I want to do?
You know, I always like, because I have a little bit of anxiety in certain areas of my life. And I always have to, I always have, and I've had like life coaches tell me, no, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. But it's what makes me feel good. So I always have like plan B.
Mm-hmm.
I always have like, and it again, it's not necessary. I just have to have that sometimes just so that I can just stay calm, you know, because like, look, there's so many things that are completely out of our control. So sometimes in our life, for me, what I have found with having anxiety is to be able to look at the things that I can control. Like, what are the things that I really can control? And those are the things that I stay really on point with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I can control in my life, you know. And then when I have like this plan B of what that might be, it again, for me, it just makes me say, okay, if I have to do a quick pivot, I have a little bit of a plan in
Mm-hmm.
place. And again, that is just something that has always made me feel a little bit calmer to be able to handle, because like, you know, I have a saying like the shit's going to hit the fan every day. Like something is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's how you like, you know, our adaptability is our superpower, how we can adapt to it, you know. And it's usually number one, you know, what do they say? Prepare for the worst and expect the best.
Yeah.
So prepare for the worst. And I think that was embedded in my head on some level. Prepare for the worst, but expect the best. And when you do that, there's freedom and liberation in that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I always used to say, like, having freedom was so important to me, and wanting to be able to live where I wanted to live was so important. I used to say, like, worst case, you know, I'll work at like the bakery, I'll work at the Stop and Shop. Like, I could do, you know, I could do something like that if I had to.
Right.
And I'm fine with that. Like, I would do something. I would make hors d'oeuvres and deliver them to people so they could have their parties or whatever. Like, I would do something like that. I'd go pick vegetables for people. Like, but you know, definitely something food oriented. But I was going to say also for me, because I get very anxious too, and I'm better now. But I having a sort of physical and mental practice every day really helps me, keeps me grounded. And that to me during this time when you know, we were forced to stay home and I live alone and I wasn't seeing anybody, and it was, you can get panicked like that and what's going to happen. And every day it was like, I mean, still, it's a nightmare what's going on every day. So for me to keep me grounded is I do a lot of like these healthy things so that I feel physically like I can handle it, and mentally, emotionally, like calmer, more grounded. And I actually wrote a story about all my little health routines. And I was telling you, Katie Couric has a newsletter, and she's putting it on her newsletter tomorrow, her wake up call newsletter. But, you know, doing those things and having those rituals every day of like, my oil pulling and my prebiotics and my hot water and lemon and my celery juice and my Chinese herbs and my Zoom yoga. Like those things have been really, really important to me to like just keep myself calm and do all that self-care. And yeah, it takes a lot of time. And but for me, it's really just keeps me grounded.
Yeah. I think it's important to have those rituals, and rituals create discipline. And
Yeah.
I know we need to have that infrastructure has to be strong. If you wake up in the morning and you just don't have an intention, like I start my morning every day with a gratitude list. And I've been doing it for 17 years. I mean, now I don't even have to write it anymore, but I roll over and it's usually about, you know, 6:45, and I just it starts coming out, and then by the time I put my feet on the ground to get out of bed, like I just envision the day I want to have, the energy. My thing is always like to just bring sunshine wherever I go. Like I just want to think of myself. I know it sounds corny, but it works for me, and it probably is like my favorite color is yellow. I even have a little yellow Fiat car that I drive around. And I swear I got this yellow car because I swear it screams, here comes sunshine.
And you
So,
are like that.
but
You are like that, Lavinia.
I just that because and I do that, yes, for others, but I also do it because I feel like when I do that, I attract I attract amazing things. When I'm like in that place of really connecting with the sun and just connecting with, let me just bring sunshine wherever I go, then all of a sudden I start getting it. It's like it starts coming to me, and it's like, oh my God, I love my life. But I notice that if I take a moment where I don't, I'm like, I get caught up in something, sadness, or I heard a story about something and it just lingers a little too long, I go out and now it's like, I'm walking across the street and I get bird poop on my head. It's like, but I'm telling you, when I'm in that high vibration, I never get the bird poop on my head. Like, it's like, so it's just being mindful of those things, to take a minute to ground yourself, to feel it, to connect. Of course, I believe everybody should have a movement practice. They should be doing something to move every day. And I think eating
Yeah.
mindfully is a big deal. And I think people are learning that. What I've learned, or what I've seen from a lot of people, is it's one or the other. Either people are being like their food has been right on point and they've been, doing amazing, or they put on the COVID-20 and they're feeling like really guilty about it. So, if that's the case, like say, okay, you know what, I'm going to get back to a place of normal. Don't beat yourself up. Don't have a shame bath. But unfortunately, when we have an extra 20 pounds on, it's not the way we look. I don't resonate with
Feel.
people. It's the way you feel. And in a time like this, we have to try to have all cylinders where we can control
Yeah.
the cylinders to be as strong as possible, so that we can actually go out there with confidence, with grace, with tenderness, with gentleness, with inclusiveness, with love, with inner strength, with strength, and go out there and do this. But if you're already feeling not good about yourself and sluggish, and your body is working so much harder just to eliminate toxins out of it, like it's almost impossible to feel good then. It's like it's
Right. Well, I
that way.
mean, for me, there's a huge connection between how I feel physically and then my mental outlook. It's like I can get pessimistic really quickly, so I need to like keep feeling happy physically so that I can be positive and optimistic and not, get really down, because there's a lot to get down about right now, obviously.
Yeah, it's your mindset. So what
Mhm.
I would love to do is, because we're at the end here, and what I would really love is if you could write something, or maybe even post whatever you're going to put. We could post it on Inside Out on
Okay.
laviniaerica.com, and maybe a couple other things that you think would be really valuable for people for their steps. Like I want us to think about, like, even if we just give them 5 steps that they can do to
Sure.
just start to pivot and to start putting in place, moving forward in, and think about it as like new business, new life. I think
Yeah,
that
no,
would be
I'd
amazing.
be totally happy to do that. And again, like, I also want to just stress, like, I'm not like a great expert at this, in that I feel like it's just ongoing. It's, I've made a ton of mistakes, and it's not easy. Like, it just was less shocking for me, I think, this spring, but it's not like I've
Could you just
mastered it.
one thing about, because I know you said you had a big aha moment when you did that behavioral test.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in personality, and knowing your personality so that you can match up what you can do, because personality, I think, is the one underestimated point for like figuring out what you're good at and what you would like to do. And it was that last week before I left, my last week at InStyle, I took that Briggs-Meyer test, which is, it's an aptitude test, personality, but also suitability for work and relationships, but for work. And I remember the whole time I was taking this test, like, this is the stupidest thing. I can't believe I have to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the last question was like, how much did this test annoy you? Like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe they're onto something. But when it came back, my assessment, one of the big categories is I'm an introvert. And I had never thought of myself as an introvert. And when I read that, I was like, that is so true. And I just realized it changed my whole outlook of what I wanted to do, because I felt like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand what it is that I like to do. And, being in my head, and putting that out there, but really being in my head. And I just felt like knowing yourself and knowing your personality, like, I'm not a good salesperson. Like, when you're talking about selling, I was like, yeah, I need to learn how to sell more. But somebody who's an extrovert, who's really good at that, they could probably be better at selling. Like, it's just knowing your personality.
No, but it also gives you, I'm going to tell you, we use that for hiring our first 5 years at Equinox.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
So it was interesting because in your sales team, you wanted your sales team to be somewhat mixed. You couldn't have everybody be a high I, because if everybody was your cheerleaders, like you needed to have a few high I's, but then you needed to have more the stable ones.
Mhm.
And there were certain jobs, but the thing that I thought was so interesting about it is, even though by nature you wouldn't, oh, by nature you're not going to be a great salesperson, but that also gives you some insight to say, wow, this may be an area where I need to go and do a little bit of work.
Right. Or if you have a partner in a business, look for that partner who has, qualities that you don't have.
Exactly.
But
I
personality, I think, is underlooked. Like, people, I think if you focus more on your personality, that will give you a lot of clues to like what you'd be successful at.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to go do it again. I haven't done it in about 20 years. I'd like to see what happens. Martha, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm just so
Thank
happy
you.
to actually be seeing you.
I
Like,
know. I know. I feel like I'm with you.
I know. And again, thank you for your time, your energy. I can't wait to see what you're doing next, because I know you're always got the most amazing projects going that are inspiring. So,
Thank you.
all right, good. So again, everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll have some information up on the website, laviniaerico.com, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye.
Bye.